What is the difference between Marxism and solidarity?
As for the difference between Marxism and solidarity, what is the difference? Marxism, as a theory, did not arise by chance. It is one of the economic truths that no one can escape anywhere, but it is not the truth at all. Consequently, no figure, no scientist, no philosopher can finally formulate an idea that does not need perfection and which is fully developed. One of them is Marxism due to its errors. These mistakes were objective given the life that existed at the time, which does not mean that it could not be developed. Marxism has different directions, including Trotskyism, Leninism, and so on. Social democracy is also a related theory. What's the difference? According to Marxism, a new economic formation must be formed by the proletariat. The proletariat, in this case, is the class that is most oppressed and economically weak. Never in history, in any epoch, has a new economic formation formed a class that was economically weakest. To revolutionize the proletariat by force and to establish Marxism is a mistake of Marxism. It is true that in Marx's theory there are provisions for exploitation, overproduction, unemployment, economic crises, and so on, but then who should lead the new formation? This direction is not correct. And why? Because when the bourgeois revolutions took place in different countries, the bourgeoisie, the national bourgeoisie, came to the fore first in Holland, in the Netherlands, and then in Europe bourgeois revolutions took place, and representatives of the bourgeois class came to power. That is, which class came to the fore? Which was economically the strongest? Is it the same now? What is happening in the world today? Today we have the international bourgeoisie brought on by economic globalization. It originated 2.5 centuries ago and has been so empowered for over 100 years that it is struggling to come to world power. Just as the national bourgeoisie came to the head of the nation states, so the international bourgeoisie must legally come to power in the world. That is, the economic and political integration and globalization of the earth is an inevitable process because the strongest economic class in the world, dominated by transnational corporations and companies, or the international capital that holds it in its hands, must lead a new formation and be the leader of a new formation, and not as Marx wrote the proletariat. It is impossible. It has to happen naturally. How naturally? Natural coming does not mean the complete elimination of violence, because when the bourgeois revolutions took place in France, the Netherlands, and other countries, there was violence and of course, violence was the way that came to the fore, but this does not mean that bourgeois revolutions in France and the Netherlands should be carried out by the workers. This is nonsense. Today, the international bourgeoisie is naturally ripe for a final revolution in the world. It is a world bourgeois revolution where global capital comes to power and is owned by the international bourgeoisie. Who is against it? Of course, the bureaucracy of the world makes an objection, as I already answered in the previous question. With what do they oppose? Precisely by the fact that representative democracy has allowed the bureaucracy to accumulate capital of non-economic origin, to become an economic class of unnatural origin. It today leads the regressive countries and has formed a coalition that opposes the expansion of international capital to open world markets. It is precisely this international bureaucracy that today, by the way, is equipped with nuclear weapons and has enormous power, is an opposition force to international capital. As for Marxism, Marxism was exported to the East. First of all, Marx said that the proletarian revolution would take place in the most developed country in the world, that is, he meant Western Europe and the United States, and for some reason, proletarian revolutions did not take place there. The revolution took place in Russia, where it was established artificially and prematurely, through the Industrial Revolution. The whole Russian experiment, this communism and so on, is an artificially established centralized economy that looks like solidarity, where there was no internal competition, where everything was run from the top, vertical, where the mine was planted to dismantle the communist system, when randomly elected representatives took possession of all state property. The property was formally owned by the people and in fact, they were always tempted to become a clan, create a corrupt system, and the corrupt system disintegrated the Soviet Union. How did it break up? By entering into a deal with the world bourgeoisie, with international capital, with Europe, and unable to compete with them. Today, however, the existing social system is much more dangerous. We have to distinguish between communist and socialist systems. There is a big difference. The socialist system operates today in Russia, in Europe as well, in the internally regulated and artificially regulated markets, and this socialist system is the main problem on the way to the liberation of international markets, on the way to the emergence of a new economic formation. The new economic formation implies that all the economic problems that humanity has today will be solved. There will be no more unemployment, no more overproduction, poverty, hunger, exploitation, inflation, and so on. The so-called universal welfare economic system will be established. We can also call it the Golden Age. Humanity will take care of the future problems that have to be taken care of today. It is ecology, it is the exploration of space, it is the introduction of new technologies, it is stopping global warming, it is solving health problems, and so on. We will not be able to solve these problems unless the major issue is still a problem. The economic issue, poverty, and hunger in the world, is resolved. The existing economic system will be ugly before the market economy itself is not liberated. Therefore, we can conclude that Marxism is artificial and prematurely established set of solidarity, that is, Marxism is a mirror of solidarity like a similar, but also opposite form. As I told you, by no means did any of the formations come to the forefront. The poorest class came to the forefront of all formations, so it was during slavery, so it was in feudalism, so it was with the national bourgeoisie when it came, and with bourgeois revolutions at the head of nation-states, and so it is today, when the world bourgeoisie is prepared to come to global power and establish a new economic form.